All right, so now we're going to take a look at the relationship here between the middle finger and the ring finger, and I want to pay a little bit of attention to what's going on here. I'm going to flip the reference and zoom in, and what I'm specifically interested in, tap the Z key, is the negative space between these two fingers. Like right now, there's something happening with this knuckle that is not being accurately reflected with this finger here. It's clearly too narrow. You can see there's that big shelf right there. This side looks, I mean, reasonably okay for the time being. It might still be a little bit, that's probably okay down there. But anyway, so this area here, we need to make it thicker so that we have a sharper V there. You can see how kind of that's more, these sides here are almost parallel, whereas here there's like a very distinct transition. So I'm gonna just mask this area off. Oh, it looks like I might have already had a mask, it just wasn't visible. So we'll try that again. I'm hitting Shift D here to go down subdivisions. And then I'm gonna use my move brush try to make this a little bit wider. It still has a, I mean, the ring is in the way, so that's a little bit inconvenient. But you can, you know, extrapolate where the where that's supposed to go, hopefully. And then I'm going to invert that mask and do the same kind of thing over here. Oh, if you hit Shift, if you see this, you might have hit Shift S, which is basically, it's just a screenshot of whatever your geometry is. It'll just kind of drop it to your canvas. So to fix that, you just hit Control N, and it will hide any inactive subtools and clear your screen. So it seems like I've got a little bit more of a curvature along this axis than what I'm seeing here. So I'm going to adjust that as well. Subtle, you know, so you don't have to go crazy with it. Just kind of get it pointing in the right direction. And I'm also going to take advantage of this to look at the index finger here. I can see that if I was to sort of make an arc here between these first knuckles on the first three fingers, this one is too far down. It needs to be up here a bit. So I'm just going to grab it and scoot it. And I expect that this will do something weird with my finger, but I'm actually totally fine with that because it can be fixed without too much trouble. I'm also going to add a little bit of volume here. And we'll pull the hand out just a little bit there. Definitely important to make sure you're not veering too far off the camera position. Looks like that knuckle there might have gotten a little bit too wide. That feels a bit wide as well. And just overall, this index finger here just feels a little bit too narrow. Pinky finger's okay. Definitely more of a shelf here than I have, but that's all right. That can be added in fairly easily. And I'm going to take this opportunity at this lower subdivision level. I'm at subdivision level 2, and I'm using the damn standard brush. And I'm actually going to start to add in the tendon area stuff here. Very, very crude, you know. Now, one thing I see oftentimes is students will maybe just run straight lines up or whatever. You can see obviously the lines here are not straight, and they're also not consistently the same thickness, and the pinky doesn't even get a tendon. Poor pinky. It does get a little bit of volume there. And I'm going to use this opportunity as well to come in with my clay tubes and just sort of push some of this stuff down and build up a little volume there on where the knuckle should be. Starting to look a little more handy. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hop back up to my higher subdivision level, and you can see how when you add stuff in at a lower subdivision level, it gets integrated a little bit more cleanly oftentimes than if you you do it up here at this highest subdivision level, which is why it's usually a good idea to try to preserve your subdivisions, because they're just full of utility when you're developing a sculpt like this. Just come in and kind of integrate some of this stuff a little bit better. This is just the flattened 404 here. So I'm feeling a lot better about what this shape here looks like. Starting to get some of that anatomical information about the underlying machinery that makes a hand work, although now obviously this index finger here is looking super weird. So let's just try to fix that real quick. Let's find a better shot here in the reference. That's pretty good, but obviously we want to flip it. And then, whoops, hit Z. And that'll be this finger here. So I didn't necessarily need that to be as high as it is. I just kind of wanted it to be at that, you know, that position there if you were to draw that arc back out. But I actually like where it is there. So I'm just going to fill in this volume. We drop it down a couple subdivisions. So there isn't really that much of a dip there. Just using the clay tubes brush here at whatever it is, Z intensity of 16. It does definitely still taper. We do have a little extra volume kind of right around here. I'm going to hop back up to the highest subdivision level. Go ahead and show everything. So I want to kind of start thinking about this area here. So I'm just going to use my clay tubes brush to kind of carve it down. So we want to keep it full through here and then, you know, start to figure out what that shelf is going to look like. Hop over to the flatten brush. Clean it up a little bit. It's probably too round on the inside here, just a little bit. Just using the flatten brush. Kind of integrate that cruder sculpting with adding the volume in at the lower subdivision level. So just kind of looking at this, it still feels like these lines here probably, it just feels a little bit arthritic maybe. So I'm just going to try to make that a little bit, those divots there are like a little bit less of a feature. And I think I might have gone a little bit too pointy with that mound there. So I'm going to fill in just a little bit more space on the front. Because it's like a nice sort of round bump right there. Not quite as severe as I had it. And then that line there is pretty straight with like a little uptick right there. And so I think I might need to just remove a tiny bit of volume. And then it's, again, kind of a rounded mound there. And I think I have it maybe just a little bit too low here. So these kind of adjustments are very, very important. You really just got to understand what's going on with the reference, because just a tiny little deviation one direction or the other can make your sculpt really change the character. You know, something that might be intended to feel either neutral or strong or, you know, benevolent or whatever, but with a few sort of incidental changes in what's going on, you can end up with something that looks like sickly or old or something. You know, you can get a little bit too severe with something and throw off the whole vibe. So we'll just do a little extra cleanup over here. Again, all I'm using here is the flat and 4x4 brush. I will almost never, ever, under any circumstances at this point in the sculpt, use the smooth brush. Because the smooth brush is going to take all of your beautiful sculpting and just erode it away as though you threw a piece of clay in a creek. So please, 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 if you can avoid it, and you probably can, if you want something to have a cleaner surface, at least at this point, you know, like I said earlier in this series, if you're working on something that is intended to be realistic, the last thing you want is a bunch of brush strokes in your mesh. But that's a little bit of a different workflow. Those kinds of projects would, I presume, would start pretty much exactly the same as this. And I think you'll see when we're done, hopefully, that the end result is definitely going to be clearly informed by reality while still being just a little bit visually intriguing. And a lot of that end result is going to be the result of this process that we're using here of adding volume with the clay tubes brush and then using the flat 4x4 to kind of pave everything back down. So I don't like how formless this underside surface is here. I assume I'm probably going to need to add a knuckle in. But I can see now that I am way over time, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of that in the next video.